Welcome to the producer profile segment of the show. In this episode, I talk to Greg Hawkins, owner winemaker of Testalonga wines in Swartland, South Africa. Testalonga is one of the most progressive producers in the country. It was the first producer to experiment with amber wines in South Africa, not without any resistance, as Greg tells in this episode. We talk about the new estate, Bandits Kloof vineyard, located in the northern mountains of Swartland, and the soils and climate of the region. South Africa is a very exciting country where a lot of new wave producers are coming up, and undoubtedly Testalonga was one of the first and the most progressive that made a difference for this country. And also we discussed with Greg where the name Testalonga comes from, and what Greg learned in this experience across Europe and more. Hi, I'm Mattias Carpazza, and this is the Looking Into Wine podcast. Wine and winemaking can be complex, but this podcast has a simple mission. We want to give you the skills and tools to harness your passion about wine. Through this series, we will shine a spotlight on some of the different regions, process, and concepts that shape the fascinating world of wine. I hope you enjoy the show and your own journey looking into wine. I'm Mattias Carpazza, your host, and today with me I have the founder of Testalonga Winery, which was set up in 2008 in Swartland, South Africa. I'm very excited to welcome to the show Craig Hawkins. Welcome.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me.
So, Craig, I know you are in the wine world for a number of years, but how did you end up being in the wine industry? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, now that you say that, I've been in the industry now nearly 20 years. So it's actually my 40th birthday at the end of the year. So I'm not a spring chicken anymore. But I got into wine I'm not from a winemaking family. So I got into wine through my older brother, Neil. He makes wine in Australia now. He lives there with his wife and 3 kids. Place is called the Wine Farm, very, very cool little winery. But he started working in the wine industry close to the Swartlands when he was about 18, 19. And I was still at school then. And I just first of all, we laughed at him because we come from a non-winemaking family. And, I'd never even thought about wine until he got into it. And then I needed money during holidays and things like that. And I started working for him in the vineyards, and then I really fell in love with it. I love outdoors and nature and physical work, and then I saw the progression from vine to wine in the cellar, and the whole thing was what really captured me was the fact that you can really do what you want in South Africa because it's a new world country. Back in 2003, 4, 5, it was really the beginning stages of exploring wine. In our country, and there's a few guys before me, or a lot of guys, but guys like Evan Sardi, Mark Kent, Tom Libber, they were really pushing the boundaries of what you can do in quality. And I was fortunate enough to work 5 harvests with Evan in South Africa and 1 in Spain, and then also I did a couple of harvests with Tom Libber in Matassa, in the Roussillon, and from there it kind of just kick-started everything. And I was fortunate enough to meet Dirk Niepoort through Evan, and I also worked for him in Austria for 4 years, and then here we are.
What did you learn in traveling from South Africa, moving to Europe and doing experience there? What was your takeaway from it?
The number one thing I learned was that we don't have the wine culture like you have in Europe, and that is exactly why I only worked in Europe. Now I travel to other wine regions, around the world, but I only wanted to focus on the old world because I don't have wine in my blood. You know what I mean? I come from, again, non-winemaking, so I wanted to tap into those old French, Spanish, Portuguese, Austrian, those guys, that wine is more than just something you make. It's something you drink and share and create stories with your friends and family. And that was the major thing that I learned.
And did you help you also in your winemaking choices that you brought back in South Africa? Was something you?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the number one thing for me there was that acidity is everything. in wine, and that was the major thing that like grabbed hold of me. And I really try to harness our natural acidity that you get in South Africa, which is quite tough because it's very hot. Our region is very hot and dry. It's quite similar, I suppose, to besides Mount Etna, like Sicily, those kind of areas. Mm-hmm. It's very cold, cold winters, wet winters, but very warm summers. And that's so to get the natural acidity is quite hard because our picking period is quite short. And so you have to know what you're doing and get experience. Otherwise, you can lose acidity.
Yeah. Well, I tried, as I was telling you earlier, I did try a few of your wines, and I always find this freshness and acidity. I really enjoy it. They almost remind me of some of the place in the old world, which I can definitely see that in your philosophy. We're talking of Sicily. I know then he has some part of your name of why you chose to your winery Testalonga. Why?
So that's a wonderful story, and it's a connection that I have very strongly actually with Italy in that regard. There's two reasons. The main reason was I was working for Remy Pedrino at Rock Glad. He's in close to Nîmes in Langlade, making amazing wines. And he was one of the first guys who taught me actually to pick on taste. I don't analyze during harvest and things like that. I just walk through the vineyard and I taste. And he always I was 24 then, and he was just kept on telling me to pick on natural acidity. And then he gave me a wine that completely changed the way I thought about all wines. And that was the wine from Antonio Perino, aka Testalonga from Dolce Acqua. And that wine blew me away completely. It was a skin contact, Vermentino on the skins. And I immediately, I knew exactly what I wanted to do in South Africa. That was the reason that changed me. Because no one was doing skin contact in South Africa. And I wanted to I just thought there's a whole nother world out here that's we're missing. And asked him if I can use his nickname. I was actually supposed to last year go for a festival with him, but obviously then we had COVID and all of that, and we haven't traveled in 2 years. But then Testalonga is also a bandit from Sicily, so I called the wine El Bandito.
Yeah. So obviously you said you wanted to bring the skin contact element into your wine in South Africa, and you were the first to do it in South Africa and with the Shining Blanc. And your Bandito, how that wine changed over the year, because obviously you've been doing it for like 8, 10 years, 12 years now. How did that change? How did that wine evolve?
So it's been a huge journey for us. And the first one we did was 2008, and it was I had no idea what we were doing. I just knew that I wanted color and I wanted tannin. So it was Shannon, it's old vineyard farmed by my father-in-law actually. And I made 2 barrels in Evan's cellar. I take my hat off. Evan helped me a lot. He gave me space to make the wine and encouraged me to do my thing, which was cool. But the wine was completely different to anything I tasted before because it was orange. It smelled like phenolic. It smelled like dried fruits and apricots and things. And I loved it. I was completely in love with it. And I think the first vintage, when I look back on it, is still my favorite because it's my first. Yeah. But from the second vintage, I tried to make it more elegant. Yeah. So it started to go more Loire style, you know what I mean? More with acidity and elegance. And then 2010, 11, and 12, I call my wild years. I did 2 years on the skin, 6 months. The wines were crazy. And I made the most mistakes I've ever made. But they were the most important mistakes to make because I learned so much about tannin and everything. And my word of advice is don't make the same mistake twice. but looking back on those wines, they're wonderful, but they're very intellectual, the 2010, 11, and 12. And then from 2013, I started to focus on elegance and making a wine that obviously I can drink a whole bottle, but also something that pairs well with food. And for those non-wine drinkers, also they can, something that's not just intellectual, it's something they can enjoy. And I think my last 4 vintages are really on track in that regard.
Absolutely. And so what's your philosophy as the winery? Because I know you have a beautiful philosophy.
Yeah, that's philosophy is obviously something you can talk hours for, but my philosophy, I think, changes. I'm very steadfast. I know what I want, I know where I want to do. But now that somebody asks me what your philosophy is, my philosophy is do your thing. It has to be original and unique to you. Don't try and do what other guys are doing and copy that, because you're just going to fall short. And that's their thing, and it's beautiful what they do, but you need to create your niche and your brand and your soul in the wine. And I think, obviously what we do, you can talk, the farming is, everything is organic. In the cellar, it's obviously no additives. We just add a little bit of sulfur. So everything is, in that terms, natural. But our number one thing is to do our thing, but do it as high quality as you can, and let the grapes do the talking. It's not about pushing a style over a place, but more just focus on quality.
And how many bottles are you producing at the moment?
So we've grown a bit. We started with 2 barrels. We do about 100,000 bottles now, which is a lot. But of that, the sparkling wine, the pet nat that we do has grown quite a bit. So that we do. So we do about 70,000 dry still wines. But I make 19 different wines. So it's a lot of different. We have many vineyards all over the place, and some of them are 300 bottles. Some of them are 15,000 bottles, but the sparkling wines, the pet nats have grown quite nicely for us, and we're fortunate that those are obviously our higher yielding vineyards, and they give great acidity and sugar for that. So that has been the main reason why we've grown.
And you're working with some very interesting grape variety. You're working with Harzeverlu. I read that and I was like, oh, that's very interesting. In I didn't even know it grew in South Africa. How did you come about that?
So there was a Hungarian viticulturist. His name was Desiderius Pongratz, and he came obviously from German. He's Hungarian, but he could speak German. But he came down through history. He came down through Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia, and it's a German-speaking country. And there, he came. He was like a what do you call it, an expat. Mm-hmm. And then he came to South Africa. And he founded a lot of the viticultural techniques. Even our university textbooks are based on writings that he did. Very simple but very good. And he planted a lot of he planted the Harzeverlu that's in the Swartlands. Some of the older Carignan. He was very pushing for grapes like Mourvèdre. So he saw that our climate and what grape varieties can work here. But Harzeverlu is beautiful. It's an anomaly, and there's not many hectares of it here. It's something I want to plant on our farm, but I make a tiny amount. I have 0.2. I have 300 vines. I make one barrel of it, but it's beautiful. It's one of my favorites.
It's a fantastic grape variety. I really like it, especially from the Hungarian region. I did try it quite a few, and I think it's fantastic grape, and I love to see it in South Africa. And so you're talking about the winery. You mentioned the winery because you have a new winery started a few years, 4 years ago now. 6 years ago.
Time flies.
You decided to do it in Swartland. Why the region the region in South Africa?
So often it's just by chance. That, to be honest, that was it. In 2004, I said to my older brother, Neil, who's the most crazy winemaker in South Africa? I want to work for him. And he said, Evan Sadi. So I picked up the phone, I phoned him, and fortunately, Evan said, we're looking for a student. So I came and I started with him, and he was in the Swartlands, and that's pretty much it. And then I never left. So from 2005, I stayed until here, and I fell in love with it. More the fact that it's quite, I wouldn't say wild, but it was a more rural area, and it was like a vacuum. There was just all these old vines waiting for people to come in and do what they want to do with them, and that's exactly what happened. So I didn't know it at the time, but we all were part of that movement where a lot of winemakers now are there. And we were we all helped grow together. But at the time, we didn't know. We were just having a good party and making quality wine and challenging each other in a positive way, intellectually and discussing things. And I think that's what makes the Swartland very interesting, is that it's a very big region, but not that huge amount of vineyards, but you have a lot of interesting people concentrated in a small area. And
I know for Swartland is such an interesting region in South Africa because, as you say, there's so many producers coming together, and it's a very exciting region. So it was something I was going to ask about that. And so you decided to plant a dry farm in the whole region. How can you do it in such a region?
It is. It's. I can say if you see the place in summer, because you have the mountain regions where most of the vineyards are. You have the Paardeberg, which is granite. You have the Riebeck Castile, which is slate and schist. And then you have the Piketberg, which is sandstone and Bokkerveld shale. And we are on the Olifantsberg, which is another mountain, which is also that shale and sandstone. And obviously on mountains, you have a little bit more water. So that helps. But in between that, you have just the wheat fields. And after the wheat is harvested, it just goes dry. So it looks like this semi-desert area.
Yeah.
But it is very difficult to farm dry land. My very young vines that I planted on our farm, or they're now 4 years old. In the first 2 years, we do give water. I do have, to get them established, and then eventually we plant quite wide. So it's like 2.5 meters by 2.5, or 2.8 by 1.8. So the vines can stand on their own and develop and get strong. And that is how you dry farm. You have to do it slowly, and not all of a sudden at once. So we only plant like a hectare at a time.
You're doing a bush. You're growing a bush vine.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm doing a goblet, but raised from the ground. So it's about 80 to 90 centimeters off the ground, and the crown of the vine is.
So what grape variety are you betting on? What is the variety that you work with?
Yeah, look, I'll keep it simple. I've traveled. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I've traveled lots around the world and seen what grape varieties work in similar climates to us. And for sure, I know that in my climate, Pinot Noir and these kind of like Gewürztraminer or something's not going to work. So I'm planting Grenache, different clones of it. I'm planting the Lammershoek, which is more tannic. I planted we call it the GN70, which is it's the original Grenache that came to South Africa, very light skinned, which I love. So we planted Grenache, Carignan, Mourvèdre, Macabeu. And next year I'm going to plant a little bit of Marsanne and Riesling. I think can work quite well here. Yeah. Long term, I'd love to plant Frappato. I think it's an amazing grape for our country.
That would be very exciting. So I could see a bit of the very New World influence of doing a bit of grape variety from the Rhone Valley. And
we're fortunate in that regard. We can do, these guys planting Greek varieties, and that's, I think, we've all got children now, and I think that the next generation can then move that forward. I think it's a bit arrogant of us or for me to say this is what's going to work here, because I actually don't know. There's never been vineyards on my mountain where we planted. Closest vineyard's 30 kilometers away. So it happens to be Grenache, and it happens to be 80 years old, so it works well. So I know Grenache for sure, but you can't just come in and say this is going to work.
And South Africa is such an interesting region. It's been growing wine for like 300 years, but it's considered like New World. How did the last couple of years? I know that South Africa's been hit quite hard with like lockdowns and ban of alcohol. How did it affected you? And
I know that we got hundreds of emails from people all around the world saying, save South Africa and things like that. But what I love about South Africa and South Africans are, South Africans are quite resilient, and we make a plan. And of course, we say boer maak 'n plan. I mean, it means a farmer makes a plan. The South Africans, if you try and keep them down, they will make a plan and sell the wine anyway. But it was difficult and trying times. Fortunately for the smaller guys like myself, we have a lot of family and cousins who love wine and can drink wine, But it was crazy because the one day what our business and everything we do is suddenly the next day it's illegal. But I mean, I was putting boxes of wine on the back of the car and putting compost heaps on bags on top and taking it. But I mean, fortunately we could still export. Yeah. So exports saved us. Otherwise we would have been in trouble. I mean, there are a lot of guys who did get hit very hard, but suddenly they sold more wine than they ever did before, but some guys struggled. So it was tough. It's just not, I just don't think it's right.
It was a very difficult decision. I mean, I was here in London during lockdowns, and I could see a lot of movement for helping the South African wine region because of all the wine countries. South Africa is the one putting all the restrictions, so there was a lot of help there, and I hope it did help a bit. But from what you're saying, and then your sales that were still going on. So
yeah, but that's just tiny. I mean, but to be honest, it was the exports that saved us and saved most guys. It's because it was just thanks to everybody overseas that did. And I joke, but without them, it would have been tough, really tough.
I wanted to ask about your labels because they're so striking and they're such an amazing and just taking out one of your bottles is just an image, amazing. Why you decide to do these images, and what are they? Just a few. What is your favorite?
Thanks for that. It means a lot. I always love when people appreciate our labels, and I think because that's for me the whole other side to wine that's often forgotten about. Again, I'll go back to my thing is you have to do your thing. I do all the labels myself. I design them myself. I have a powerful computer with Illustrator and things. I started on MS Word, but now I use Illustrator for designing the labels. So it's either photos I've taken, my wife, my family, friends, or even for instance, some time I met Claudia in London, and she took the Cortez 2018, and she was at a tasting of wine, and she showed me this photo that she took in Cambodia of this guy harvesting sulfur on a mountain, holding a cigarette, and like his fist, and I just thought it's beautiful. So I used that for my Cortez label. So that's often the inspiration. It's people send me photos, and I love that. I think it's a very interesting way to do things, but it's also quite raw, and that's the way we are. The labels aren't perfect, and I think that's what maybe makes them edgy. But they all have, like the wines, they all have a clear line. You can see it's one of my labels, but you can't quite put your finger on what makes it interesting.
Yeah. Which one is the one you are more passionate about?
Look, my passion obviously about them all, but I love the first one because it was my first. And when you look at, that's the Albandita skin. So it's a black and white one. In the middle of the label, there's an Irish harp. I've got an Irish passport, my grandfather, fortunately. So it allowed me to travel to Europe, come and go as you want. But in the middle of the label, I remember starting with the label, it was just a white piece of paper, and I put the Irish harp, and then I put made from Chenin Blanc. And I was like, that's just cheesy. And I said, what are we actually doing? Then I said, what am I doing? I'm making wine from grapes. That's what I'm doing. And it's funny. So I changed it. I put made from grapes in the middle of the page. And that's on all of our labels. You see that. And people laugh. They go, oh, obviously it's made from grapes. But that is what we're about. There's no other stuff. It's grapes. And if you think about it, and I like that. And I based it on a Toulouse-Lautrec poster, the Chateau wine.
Yeah.
It says it's now 20 franc. So it's getting expensive. That's the vintage bit. That and the ninjas. I love the ninja labels. It's my friend Paul in the swimming pool. I took the photo of him. He was just smiling, happy with his cap to the side, just posing.
Do the label change every year or every so often? Like, can you do a collection with your labels of like a Bandito, Cortez or something?
Yes, the Cortez, that label changes every year. It's the only one. Purely because the first label I used for the Cortez was a photo taken, or it's still disputed by, but it was a famous photographer this old lady found these negatives in her attic of these photos. And it's an amazing photo, but I used it. Then I realized, what happens if the wine becomes a bit more well known, and I didn't want a lawsuit against me, so I changed the label every year, and that's just why I changed the Cortez. But I like the fact it changes every year, because it gives me an opportunity to make a new label.
And there was just the last couple of questions. There was the story of your wines being rejected from the wine association, but you couldn't actually export them. How happened? Why?
Yeah, I think that's something. It's almost it's from 2008, 2009. When we looking back at the time, it was extremely frustrating. And as a young man, you always feel like you're the victim and the world's against me, and why can't I export my wine? You don't understand me, like poor me. But looking back on it, the wines were so different to what was being made back then. No sulfur, skin contact, like they were crazy. So in South Africa, there's still quite a strict system of getting the wine certified. Mm-hmm. So in able to sell a wine, certified or uncertified, it has to go through a tasting panel through these guys, and they taste it. And obviously, they said this wine doesn't fit the criteria of Chenin Blanc. And it was very frustrating because I was like, why? They said, no, it's oxidized. So they actually rejected it. How it works in South Africa, you have 3 chances to taste the wine. You get 1 strike, you submit it again, 2 strikes, submit again, 3 strikes. Okay. So after the 3rd strike, it's final. And that doesn't ever really happen. But that happened to me, and I was like, okay, it's not good, because I've got people in London who want to buy the wine, Doug and Eric and Philippe from Le Carte Perrine. Yeah. And, writing letters, like saying, here's the purchase order, the wine's fine. So I actually said, okay, let's do this scientifically. So I said, why is the wine rejected? I said, because it's oxidized. Like, okay. So I took it to the university. There's a professor, a friend of mine. We actually analyzed it for oxidation, compounds, and it was actually the complete opposite. It was actually more reductive than oxidative. So I said, okay, here we go. Here's a letter from the professor. This wine is actually now, what do we do here? And I just pushed so hard, and eventually they got it approved. But long story short is we actually ended up opening categories, skin macerated white wines. Yeah. And now, like the guys who came before me that did straw wine, they got rejected, same things, they opened category. And so we opened a few. We opened alternative red and whites, which is like basically very low sulfur red and white wines. That's it. And then skin macerated whites, we did Pet Nat, Method Ancestral. And then Ardy and Evan did one called a sun wine, and also like a sherry wine, which was, so it was cool. Wow. It was a cool moment. Yeah.
I mean, it's super interesting. I feel like you're writing history there for the future of South African wine. I mean, there's the category of orange wine and the skin content wine is something that is growing globally. So I think it's exciting. It's like an exciting category.
Definitely. And when I first made that skin macerated white wine, orange wine, like the guy said to me, he said, "This is very cool, but how are you going to sell the wine? Who's going to drink this?" And I actually started sweating, getting cold. I was like, maybe he's right. And I thought, then I stopped. I woke up one night and I said, if there's somebody like me out making this wine, there must be somebody out there that likes to drink it. So that is how I met Doug Red from La Carte Perrine. And then through them, all my doors opened. And I take my hat off to them. I mean, they took a punch with our wines, and they backed us, and they've helped me grow and express ourselves to who we are. And sorry, last thing is that in Cape Town, nobody knew orange wines, but now you go to the wine bars and you see young people, old people, they go, "Oh, it's an orange wine," and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, because I can see that in London happening, and for me, South Africa is such an exciting country, and as a whole, and I love exploring it as the different parts of South Africa, and I think the future is going to be very exciting to see with new producers and new ideas coming. What's the future? The last question. What's the future like for you at Testalonga?
For us, I think it's looking. The nice thing is excuse the cliche. I mean, we put down roots. We've bought some land. We've planted vineyards. This is our home. This is our cellar. And we're moving forward nicely, slowly but steadily. And fortunately, we have good partners overseas and locally that support us and are bought into what we do. And we respect that. And I think that's very important. That there's a give and take on both sides. But the futures, there are more wine from our farm, which is great. And my young daughter will grow up, so there's a future there too, if she wants it.
There you go. Greg, thank you. I wanted to thank you for your time this half an hour together, and for your wine there at Testalonga, and I wish you all the best, and I'm sure I'll see you here in London at some point when finally the traveling and events start happening again, and thank you again for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's really, I said this during the lockdowns and things. It means a lot that the people overseas that are interested in what South Africans are doing, and I think it's good. The future for South African wine is looking promising. And thanks for having me.
Remember to hit the follow button to know when the upcoming episode have been released, and to leave a review. You can reach us on Instagram on Looking Into Wine, and Mattia Scarpazza on all other social medias. If you're enjoying the podcast, you can donate on mattiascarpazza.com. Music produced by Samuele Di Nardo, editing and mastering by Tommaso Ascoli. Remember to subscribe.
Heat pack or ice pack?
Ice pack.
Bath or shower?
Bath.
Treat or prevent?
Both. Nurtec ODT Rimegepant 75 milligrams is the first and only medication proven to treat and prevent migraines in adults. The choice is yours. Don't take if you're allergic to Nurtec ODT. The most common side effects were nausea, stomach pain, and indigestion. For important safety, prescribing, and patient information, visit NURTEC.com. Talk to your doctor about Nurtec ODT.